strengthen each other, and that alone is good. Just to spread chizuk and to strengthen each other on the responsibility that we have and the confidence that we should have that we can, with effort and investment, be matzliach in the chinuch of our children. I want to just share with you a short word from the Rebbe on chinuch, where he talks about Yehuda coming back to Yosef when Yehuda and the brothers brought Binyamin back to Yosef in Mitzrayim. The story when Yosef puts the gevia, the cup, in the bag of Binyamin and so on, and then he brings them all back. And it says there, Vayigash Elov Yehuda, and Yehuda went forward. And as Chazal tell us, he didn't just go forward to talk nicely to Yosef, he was ready for war. Why he was ready for war? Because he says to Yosef, Ki avdecha ora vesanar. I took responsibility for this boy, and therefore I have to go all out. And the Rebbe points out an amazing thing, was we find previously in Chazal and in Rashi, that the Bnei Yaakov, the children of Yaakov, had tremendous koyach, had tremendous strength. Unbeknown to the Shvatim, who didn't yet know that Yosef was their brother, there was a case, an instance before when the sons of Yosef stamped on the ground and the whole Mitzrayim shook, and they realized that they have strength, they have koyach, similar to the Shvatim. Therefore, when it came to Vayigash Elov Yehuda, that Yehuda is coming and is about to go, he's ready for war with Yosef, he knew he was entering a war which he could really lose. That was going to be hard to win, and he still went for it. Why? Ki avdecha ora vesanar, because your servant took responsibility for this child. Baruch Hashem, we have kinderlach, we have children, and we live in challenging times, and often it seems like it's difficult, it's hard, and things are going against us, the distractions, the technology, whatever it is, that is the influences that are going against us, and it's a war which we think that we cannot win. But ki avdecha ora vesanar. We took responsibility for our children. We have responsibility for our children. Therefore, we have to believe that we have the siyata dishmaya. We have the koyach from the Eibishter and the brachas to be able to succeed. If we put in the effort and we come together and we think about it and we reflect upon it, we will rescue the boy. We will rescue Binyamin, because ki avdecha ora vesanar. Now, when it comes to chinuch itself, inspiring children when it comes to davening b'chalal is not always easy. Parents, mechanchim, often struggle, often complain with this whole idea of getting children to daven, and there's a few reasons for this. First of all, davening is hard for everyone. Shas Tzloisa, Shas Karova, the time of davening is a time of Milchama, as we know. It's a difficult thing to do day in and day out. It's not exactly the most exciting activity if you don't understand the depth. Secondly, davening is not an instruction. It's not like telling someone to do something. It's not an instruction, it's not a learning, it's not a subject. It's more of a value. In other words, it's something which you have to be avodah shebelev. That's what davening is. It's something you have to have b'pnimis. You have to feel something for it. You have to feel either the commitment to do it b'kabbalah soul, you have to feel the depth of it, you have to feel the Pirush HaMilas, you have to understand what you're doing. We know that even in Rosh Hashanah, the Shulchan Aruch talks about a chazan that ideally should be someone over 30, someone has children, because he knows that a daven is that life experience. That's a difficult thing to connect to just stamazay. So it's hard, it is a hard thing. Particularly Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, it's a long davening. So I want to share some thoughts with you, some ideas, to focus on Chodesh Tishrei, but some of what we're going to say, or a lot of what we're going to say actually, is relevant for the concept of davening the entire year. So what I want to do firstly is break this up into two topics, into two parts. The first is what we call Oir Makif, and then Oir Pnimi. What do I mean? One of the things we need to understand in chinuch is that any specific strategy, any specific prat, detail in chinuch that we try and implement is only as good as the avir, the culture, the atmosphere, the feeling that's there driving those specific details and those specific strategies. They call it today culture. In other words, at home, what's the feeling at home? What's the avir that the child is immersed in? Because it's the avir, the atmosphere that we create, that drives the pratim. And when those details are communicated or expressed out of context, they're not backed up, they're not driven by a particular strong embedded culture, avir, atmosphere in the home, they're often very, very not effective. In other words, benegel in yoneinu. Before we talk about specific strategies of coming up Rosh Hashanah, how do I get my child excited about davening on Rosh Hashanah? I'm talking about children of all ages really, younger children, children of 10 years old, 12 years old, 13 years old, even after our mitzvah. Obviously the strategies differ, but the first thing I need to think about is, what am I doing at home to create a yisoy, to create an avir? Is there an avir at home that will drive and impress upon the child, and it'll be in the air and absorbed in the walls, that we have holy days coming, Heli Kateg, where davening is even more important perhaps than the rest of the year. And I think what that means is as follows. Children, when it comes to Chodesh Elul, or when it comes closer to Rosh Hashanah, somehow in an unspoken message, the first thing is they have to feel, for anything on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur to be successful with their involvement, with their hislapshus, they have to feel the urgency, they have to feel the difference at home. They have to feel that there's an anticipation, there's a conversation happening that's around the Yonim of Elul. There's something different that's happening as we build up the whole anticipation, as we build up the whole sort of avir towards Chodesh Elul. And this can happen in a number of ways. So let me just give a couple of examples. First of all, I think it's really important that at home we don't just let Elul slip by, where we go about our normal way, but as the Rebbe used to emphasize so many times, the Melech Basad, the Mashal of the Alter Rebbe, we need to make sure that at home, particularly with young children, when we come home on a regular weeknight, which is what Chodesh Elul is, it's weekday, as the Alter Rebbe points out, but we're sitting down at a table, somehow we have to, or we schmoozing with our kids or our family, somehow the topic of Elul has to be in conversation. It has to be Melech Basad. We have to be, it doesn't mean necessarily it has to be formal learning. Formal learning doesn't always work with children. But there has to be informally, whether it's at meal times, whether it's asking them what they learned, whether it's sharing an idea that you learned, whether it's something that you learned specially to do with Chodesh Elul or Tshuva that you can inspire, that you can share with the table. You know, I learned something amazing today, a gematria, a voit, a sipur, whatever the case is that you can share, so that children start to see, hey, something's different here. Chodesh Elul is somewhat different. The atmosphere, the avir in the home is different. I think also telling stories is really, really important. Age appropriate, of course. One of the most powerful things that have always made an impression on me and with my children as well is reading the Lekutei Diburim of how the Frierdiker Rebbe describes the Elul Avir, as the Rebbe points out in the Sikha. How the Frierdiker Rebbe describes Lubavitch, how it was in Elul, the urgency, how I'd wake up in the morning and go to mikveh and you see people rushing because they're a bit late. How you hear the voices of the shofar coming from the shuls, how you go into a shul and you see people deep in davening, and so on and so forth. The beautiful oisius, the way the Frierdiker Rebbe describes it is just amazing. Such a beautiful thing to read to children. Stories and sikhs of the Frierdiker Rebbe describing how the Rabbeim daven ba'arichus on the first night of Rosh Hashanah, getting the children into the mindset of how important the tefillahs are on Rosh Hashanah. Telling personal stories. I know that I used to tell my children when they were young, often before Rosh Hashanah, tell them a story of a great uncle of mine that never spoke on Rosh Hashanah. He was ogihit because Rosh Hashanah b'chsidim was mamash. He didn't even speak dvarim b'teilim, nothing. He used to not even pass the salt. He would just, knew the whole Rosh Hashanah would just tilim and davening. Get people excited. Talk to girls how amazing it is that the very, very first mitzvah of the year is mitzvah adlokas neiris. Go through the special days of Elul, Yud Gimel Elul, Tezvav Elul, Chai Elul, Gimel L'Slichas, the Tzemach Tzedek's birthday, the special days, it's so packed. In the month of Elul, we'll talk about the idea of Chai Elul, the 12 days going to Rosh Hashanah, leading up to Rosh Hashanah, 1 day per month, and so on and so forth. One thing that's very, very powerful that I've done with my children, and by the way, when I talk to parents, I always tell them that I tell stories that I've done which have been effective, but I only tell you the stories that worked. There have been stories that don't work. None of us are perfect and we make mistakes. So obviously I do not paint myself as a perfect parent, but I can share stories that have worked. One of the things that has been very, very powerful is starting a conversation somewhere in the middle of Elul, telling the kids the stories of how Tishrei was by the Rebbe during the week, to show them videos to back that up. If you're old enough to have experienced Tishrei by the Rebbe in any way, to tell them stories how it was, how the Orchim came, how the atmosphere was, the Vidu Malkeinu when the Rebbe came into davening, and so on and so forth. And of course, one of the ways we teach values and we teach things is by modeling. Sorry to use the cliche, but to be a dugma chaya, children have to see that we are doing things differently in Chodesh Elul. They need to see perhaps each one kafin yoneh. They have to see maybe fathers who maybe not so makbid with a minyan. I'm not condoning it, but not so makbid with tefillah b'tzibur. Perhaps in Chodesh Elul making more of an effort. They have to see mothers saying extra tilim, doing extra things. Just the avir should be different, because when the avir is different, then it's embedded and it sends a strong message more than talking. Just the culture, the avir of how things are differently done in Elul, and that means that special days are really coming. If you're checking your tefillin and mezuzahs, which is a good thing to do during Chodesh Elul, include your children. If you have to drop off the tefillin in the sofer, take your children with you. Talk about the 3 kapitlach tefillin. Maybe some of your children are old enough, you can say it together with them. Give your children extra coins for tzedakah. If you give them a coin when they go to school during Elul, give them extra coins. When they come home, give them extra money to give to tzedakah, even a few coins, even small things, just so that they see that we're taking the Chodesh Elul really, really seriously. So that we build up an anticipation to the Yomim Noiroim, to the special days that are coming. So I think that's just a general idea, because the Oyer Makif has an unbelievable pu'ula. Obviously, we need to move on and talk about specific details when it comes to davening. But if it's backed up by a general message at home, that this month is different and we're preparing for really, really special times, it's incredibly powerful of how that message is actually absorbed. And don't worry about if that message is not being gotten everywhere else that the child is. I'm sure it is to an extent anyways, in school, etc. But let's remember as parents that klal godel in parenting, that there's nothing as powerful as the home. Even when we think we're getting distractions from other places, at the end of the day, the anchor of a child is the home. So when we try and build that avir of Elul, and that culture, that atmosphere, then we can talk about specific inyanim to do with tefillah. How to get kids excited about davening in general, and with a focus here on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. So I want to just talk about 2 things first of all. That in parenting b'chlal, this is true with everything, but we'll talk about davening. With any instruction, with any expectation we have with children, there are 2 critical components. The first is expectations. What are our expectations? And the second is planning. Planning ahead of time. One of the most ineffective ways to impose upon children something we want them to do is to ask them to do it by surprise when the thing is supposed to be happening. The more we're able to plan ahead and discuss it with the child and communicate it clearly with our children what we expect of them ahead of time, the more effective it is. So the first thing we need to know are expectations. In other words, we need to actually sit down, father and mother together maybe, and figure out with each child, what actually do we want from this child on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur? What is their age group? What is their age level? What is their level of reading? What is their sitzfleisch like? Every child is different. How much tilim do you want your children to say on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur? How much is realistic? Don't demand, expect, but don't overdo it. Because if we overdo it, we set up the children for failure. So with some children might be, younger children might be, we want them just to come in at certain points of davening, and we want them to teach them how to sit in shul properly with their acheretz, and maybe take davening seriously. As they get older, we want them to daven certain tefillahs. We want them to be in shul in certain times. Every child is different. I think with younger children, the best times for them to be in shul is times when things are happening. Shofar, Kriyas HaTorah, when you have to go kush the Sefer Torah, you have to only say a little bit, and so on and so forth. But don't bring children into shul if they're not able to sit there properly, and don't use shul as a babysitting service, because that never ever works. We need, first of all, to work out in quite a protestic way, in a quite a specific way, what actually do we expect this child to achieve on Rosh Hashanah. And then, planning. We have to sit down with the child ahead of time and say, it's coming Rosh Hashanah. This is, if we've created the right avir. It's coming Rosh Hashanah. Last year you were pretty good. This year we have to now upgrade it. I know you really want to daven properly. Davening is so important. Let's talk together about what actually is going to happen on Rosh Hashanah, and let's prepare to make it really, really good. So we have to sit with them ahead of time. We have to plan together. We have to clearly communicate our expectations, and we have to help them do it and help them achieve those expectations. Once we've done that, then we have to set them up for success. And set them up for success, I want to run through a whole bunch of things that perhaps we can do to make it work. These are things that worked for me in the past, things that could work. Bearing in mind, not everything works for every child. I'm just sharing with you ideas. If it works, go for it. If it doesn't work, try something else. And if what you're doing already works, don't worry about it, because in Chiluk, what works, works. So, first of all, one of the great things you can do is you can actually sit down with the machzor a bit before and go through some of the tefillahs with them. Some children need kriya practice. Some children, things we set them to daven, they might not want to daven because they actually don't know how to read it very well. We might want to explain to them the structure of the Shemona Esrei, how it works. Again, each one according to their right age. As they get older, how they say the piyutim, how the piyutim are supposed to be staying. When you stand, when you sit, do it all before. But here's one word of caution. Not every parent is able to learn with their child. Sometimes these things have to be done very informally. Sometimes the father does it better, sometimes the mother does it better. Whatever the case is, you need to make it work, because one thing is for sure, if we turn this into a negative experience, even if we succeed on all levels here, even if we succeed short term, we will lose long term, because it'll just be an imposition, it'll just be put upon them, and they will come to resent it. Yes, we have to make it very clear what our expectations is, that we do expect them to be in shul on Rosh Hashanah, we do expect them to sit for a certain amount of time, we do expect them to grow each year and to upgrade it, so that when they turn bar mitzvah and bas mitzvah, or they get older, they're actually proper daveners sitting in shul, but it can't be b'derech kfir, because it simply won't work. It's got to be b'derech ava. We've got to make it clear what we expect, and we've got to set them up for success in the best possible way. Sometimes it means schmoozing as we're taking a walk, sometimes it means sitting down with a machzor. Choose it carefully. Just choose it very, very carefully. One of the things that's worked for me in the past, as they get older, and I can see I expect them to sort of sit in shul a bit, is I take them to a bookstore, a svarim store, I buy them their own machzor. I learned this from the Rebbe. The Rebbe said with regard to the Haggadah, the Siddur, it's a beautiful thing when a child has their own machzor, own Siddur, own Haggadah, and I think the same things with a machzor. Buy them a machzor, inscribe it for them, give it them as a present. This is your machzor. Ask them what machzor they want, right? So they should have their machzor, write a note in it from Tati or from Mami, whatever the case is, so that it's theirs. And if you practice before Rosh Hashanah, that's the machzor you use. We're going to make sure to bring it to shul on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, so it's your machzor, be in your place, something that you can use. Obviously, with some kids, especially the younger ones, the best thing is to try and also make an incentive program. This is what I expect you to do. This is what we're going to do Rosh Hashanah, but I'm going to reward you. But I want to say something about rewards. The most ideal reward you can give a child, and we don't have time to go into this tonight, but this is based on many, many inyonim and sikhs of the Rebbe, of course, is to try not make it an over-the-top reward, and also at a time make it a reward which is machazik the ruchnius. I have both my own children and children in the shul that I run. I've advised parents, in fact last year we made a whole bit of a group here of boys that would daven, and part of the time next to their fathers, part of the time in front of the shul, like a shtickle choir we made. I promised them that if they do it nicely throughout the whole month of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur and Hallel and Sukkot, or Shabbosim leading up to Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur and so on, I would buy them their own set of arba minim. For some children that's a beautiful thing. They'll be able to come to shul with their own set of arba minim. Maybe some parents do this anyway, but some parents don't. You get a cheap set for them, it'll be theirs, they can stand next to you during Hallel, or whatever the case is, or a book of Tilim, or a Svarim, or something that's shaykh for girls will obviously be a little bit different, but things that are not over the top, and things ideally that are more closer to ruchnis, and we'd be surprised how much it works. If that doesn't work, we have to think of other things, more powerful things, but an incentive, of course, not one that will be over the top, and that will be the only reason they do it, and they won't even be thinking about the davening, but something just to push them ahead, to make them look forward to achieving their expectations to what they want to do. There could be a family discussion about how many prokim of Tilim are going to be said during days of Rosh Hashanah, maybe a family competition, and so on and so forth. Obviously, goes without saying, and maybe this isn't so easy for some people, but depending on where you live, choose a minyan on Rosh Hashanah which is a serious minyan. It is very hard to expect a child to sit next to you and daven properly if you're davening in a shul where unfortunately the avir in the shul is not kedaboi, and therefore choose a shul, number one, which is a serious shul, which is taking davening seriously, which there's no talking, and it's a nice davening. Not too long, not too short. Choose a shul where you can have your children sit next to you for the parts of davening you want them to be there. That's how children learn to daven. They learn to daven sitting next to their children, next to their parents. It's really, really, really important. But here are some really important things. Number one, and I can't emphasize this enough, this whole process, all these ideas, need to be b'darkei noima, b'darkei shalom. Don't instruct, build excitement, build anticipation. Do it in the way that you know, talk to the child in the way you know it's going to be niskabel. The second thing that's really, really important is on Rosh Hashanah, when this actually happens, or Yom Kippur, the child comes and they stay next to you in shul, don't over-focus on how well they're davening. Let them just sit next to you and let them do their best. I want to share with you a personal story, and I think this is a really, really important thing with regard to davening b'chlal and how we teach children to daven. I think it's really important from an early age to make sure that children are in shul, growing up age appropriate, more and more in shul, because the goal is that you'd sit in shul and daven. I have two sons. They won't mind me saying this, I know that, but one of them was naturally a good davener when he grew up. The other one found davening much more difficult. So first of all, the expectations were different. I did the ages different. So for the one that didn't have Zichvleish, which Baruch Hashem today is a very good davener, but I brought him into shul at certain times. The shul we davened in, the shul I ran at the time, had place outside they could play safely, so they could do that, but there was times they would call him into shul, started with small things like Kriyas Torah, Kedusha, grew it, kept on growing it, pushing him a little bit here and there, and that was Chok v'Layaver. The expectation was very clear that they had to be in shul at that time. He had to be in shul during that time. However, when he came to shul, the truth is he hardly ever davened. At an early age, he liked to read English books, and he read the Medrash Says, the family Medrash Says, which is a good book, b'chlal. The result of all of that was, he sat next to me as I davened. Once in a while, he'd take a sit, daven a little bit here or here. The result at the end was that he knew a lot of Tanakh from the Medrash Says, plus he learned how to daven. When you sit in shul and you point to the siddur the whole time and you push kids and you turn them off davening. It doesn't work. They need to learn it by osmosis. Davening is not an instruction. Yes, the expectations have to be clear. You have to do as much groundwork as you can to get them involved. You have to test them, make sure their kriya is good, practice some of the davening than before, as we talked about. If you have an opportunity, talk about some of the meaning of the tefillahs and so on and so forth. But the real way they'll learn to daven is by being in shul, sitting next to someone who is davening, sitting next to people who are davening. That's the best way to actually teach serious davening. It's not like teaching a piece of Gemara. Davening is a whole nother concept. They will learn to daven by being in shul, modeling and learning and absorbing how someone else davens, whether it's their father, their grandfather, an uncle, the shul, a mother, an aunt, a sister, whatever the case is. But if they're in an environment of tefillah, even if they don't say every word and they're a bit antsy and they're a bit ready to go out, the fact that they're there and the expectation was clear, but they're being in a sviva of davening will ensure, hopefully, successful davening. Don't make it into a negative experience, make it a positive thing. And of course, positive feedback is really, really important. Age appropriate and in an appropriate way, but if the child reached their expectations, even partially, give feedback. That was very good, today was really good, tomorrow maybe even better, or it was fantastic the way you davened today, I'm very proud of you. Make sure to give feedback. Younger children need feedback in front of other people, sometimes older children it's more one-to-one, whatever the feedback mechanism is, but positive feedback is of course, and if you did promise them things, obviously follow through and make sure they enjoy their prizes or they enjoy the things that you promised them as a result of good davening. And let's just hope, and as we come to Rosh Hashanah, that again, getting together for chinuch, getting together for a chinuch inyan, obviously is one of the most beautiful things we can do, especially during Chodesh Elul, because at the end of the day, we are all children. Na'ar Yisrael v'Ayaveyu, we are Kadosh Baruch Hu's children, we are the Eibishter's children. And let's hope that in the schus of getting together and focusing on chinuch, and doing it be'ava, doing it with a love, as a parent can do it to a child, the Eibishter of course will do the same. Ki Na'ar Yisrael v'Ayaveyu, he will bench us all as a father benches kinderach, with a ksiva v'achsim toiva and a good gebench to yor, begashmis v'ruchnis b'toiv hamnira v'anigla, for all of you and all of us, and for ganz Klal Yisrael. Thank you so much, first of all, to